Bien and Ryan.
Good afternoon.
Hi, everybody. Okay.
Hello, good afternoon. Please go ahead.
Gracias. Hola a todos.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody to Microsoft Cloud Events Monterey 2022. Thank you all for joining. We'll go ahead and get started here. I'd like to, our subject for the day is addressing the challenges of Microsoft 365 monitoring, and we'll be covering governance, monitoring, license optimization, and my special guest for today is Jay and John from eNow Software. And Jay, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, first of all, super excited about being part of this event. Dave, I love your commitment to the community, to charity. Dave and I we've interacted on Twitter for years and actually only met a year ago, although the friendship that we've developed feels like it's longer than a year, Dave. We spent a lot of time together. As far as my background, it kind of gets into my journey to IT. I think each of us have a journey in how we've gotten to supporting end users. My story actually started, and I'm not that old, back in 1995. My brother was working with Bill Gates, and I was in school contemplating being a lawyer. I was actually working as an intern, not liking it. And my brother came to me with a bet. My older brother was a VP at Microsoft. And so he came to me knowing that Bill wanted to create an army of technical professionals to take on IBM and LAN Manager, go back to the early NT days. And so he challenged me. He said, I don't think you're smart enough to pass these MCSE tests, which no one even knew what MCSE meant. My ego was hurt. I took the test, crushed them. And the rest is really history. I actually got into technology, caught the wave, and really what a common theme, and you'll see this theme throughout even today's presentation, I'm super passionate about solving problems for the IT professional and business. And how that kind of interweaves with my story is one of the first gigs I had the opportunity to work on. There's a government agency in America called the Small Business Administration. And this organization is designed to help small businesses. I personally have received some benefits from it. Little did I know the story would come full circle. I had the opportunity to go set up their email system with Microsoft Exchange 4.0 and troubleshoot it, eventually take over that project. And that was a transformative experience because I got to see the impact of technology to an organization, and coming full circle impacted me personally. But watching and learning about the stress of, oh my goodness, email's down, this office can't service the end user. That led me on a career path of consulting and doing Microsoft work all around the world, which is just freaking amazing. Going to Scotland, Edinburgh, like what an amazing city. Never would have been there if it wasn't for an exchange project. Going to Brazil, and I actually lived a year in South America and Chile. So just super cool experiences, all because of technology. My next stop, which is really influential here and hopefully will relate to the audience, is I took a job as a messaging manager in 2003 out here in California. And so I was responsible for about 18,000 users across all the continents, multiple companies. And why I took the job was, after being a consultant for so long, I wanted to see what it was like on the other side. And that was just transformative in itself, because when you're part of an IT department and getting yelled at by executives and CIOs because email's down, different story. I only lasted a year there, and that led me to starting eNow. eNow started as a consulting company, and then I like to say we fell into the software business because we were trying to solve some problems for our clients, and that led to us creating some software that went viral. We ended up hitting 66 countries around the world, ultimately 130, and now we serve customers everywhere. And I say serve because it really is a job of service, and we specialize in monitoring and analytics. And now that we moved into Office 365, there's a whole new world, right, that we're supporting. So I hope that's a little bit long in the background, Dave, but I wanted to give people context on why I'm here today.
Oh, thank you, Jay. Tell me a little bit about, some of the things you were doing. Like you were talking with a lot of the senior execs at these companies, right? And I'm sure that these weren't small companies either. And was that more on the consulting side, or was that when you were working, when you were rolling up your sleeves and working directly with them, or how did that all?
Yes, I would say both. When I was in the IT profession, the conversations, a lot of them weren't pleasant because they were upset. And that's what ultimately led me to the software business, because the tools weren't delivering what we needed. Today, what I do as a technical founder and CEO of eNow, I interface with the executives at our customers to figure out what challenges they're facing in the cloud, how are they facing them, and ultimately how we as a software vendor can solve those problems. So a lot of my conversations stay around, hey, how are you handling, hey, you got to 365. Oh my goodness, governance is a problem. Or how do you handle being proactive when you can't RDP into a server, right? So the conversation has changed, but the constant theme is still the same today.
Absolutely. The conversation is the same, but the technology certainly is evolving and working very quickly. For example, we still at Crush Network still do quite a bit of work with on-premise customers. These are large enterprise customers that, for special reasons, which we won't go into, cannot or are refusing to go online. And even within organizations, we are seeing some divisions that are ready to go online, but because the parent company, for other compliance reasons, just can't quite yet. And the divisions are excited and want to go online, but they can't. So that's unfortunate. And I think the biggest change I've seen is like managing on-prem infrastructure has been completely different from managing Office 365 and all the online products that have been coming out since BPOS and stuff. And I think that, sure, we all do a lot of migrations, and in the infrastructure, building the infrastructure is way different. You still have to architect solutions that work in the cloud. I mean, we used to be trying to figure out how many physical 3U servers we needed to put in a rack, and now we have to figure out our customers' Azure spend. So things are definitely different, but I'd say that fortunately, managing it has been a real challenge for customers, especially those that are hybrid. And fortunately, we've seen the benefits that people gain when they leverage a product like your monitoring suite. And I mean, how are you seeing the challenges of managing infrastructure and of online systems, just keeping stuff up and online? I know your solutions have been monitoring Exchange on years, and I won't go as far as to say saving lives, but IT managers certainly appreciate using your products. So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's changed a lot. I think it starts with visibility. When I got yelled at by the CIO of the company back in 2004, we're actually celebrating our 18th birthday as of yesterday. I'm not that old, but geez, I can't believe it's been 18 years. What an amazing ride. And I'm so blessed we would never would have met if it wasn't for a career like this. So kind of cool, the people I've met along the way. But when I was getting yelled at on the 38th floor of this building, and this company was really wealthy, they knocked out all the floors. I'm in this skyrise and I'm looking up 3 stories. I'm looking over the ocean of LA. I'm getting yelled at because my email is down. That's the time you would see an executive, and executives wouldn't care if you were migrating. They wouldn't say, go migrate to Exchange 2013. They would say, why is the email system not up? And the only time you were ever heard or talked to was when there was a problem, going back to my thankless job problem. It's very different now. I'm in conversations, have numerous conversations with SVPs at huge organizations calling me saying, Jay, the CEO got to Microsoft. Microsoft got to the CEO and said we could go to 365 by the end of the year. How am I going to migrate a couple 100,000 users and deal with compliance? Like, WTF, I want to quit my job. Real conversation I had. And so Microsoft's done, first of all, Office 365, amazing product. Incredible. But their sales and marketing organization have got new executives and said, no, we're going to go to the cloud. So the visibility on the technology is like never before. The expectation, and again, 365 is a great platform, but some of the expectation that was set was it was going to do everything. And a lot of IT events freaked out and resisted the cloud. And so now that we're in the journey, there's a whole new set of problems. But that perception of it being easy and the combination of not having tools and visibility and still have to support it, that is the friction point that we're seeing. It's a major friction point, and it goes across all the topics we're going to talk about today: monitoring, governance, license optimization. We're only going to scratch the surface. And so as a vendor, we try to solve those problems. Another change that I've noticed too is when you have Link, Server, Exchange, SharePoint, AD, these different products, organizations, no matter what, whether it's political, whether it's network, whether it's all these different teams, they can never get the solutions working seamlessly together. And so the benefit of 365 is you have incredible collaboration. The problem is we're along for the ride and features are coming out left and right. And that's where, again, all these problems come from. So I see a major change. And I think organizations now are wising up. And thanks to you for putting on events like this where we're educating people. And the need for education, the need for these local events is critical to keep educating. So that way everyone knows how to deal with the bullet train that we're on. That's kind of how I would summarize it.
Thank you, Shay. Yes, it is definitely a roller coaster. And, you know, as much as we like to specialize in what we do at Crush with SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, I mean, almost the entire last 2 years has been Power Platform. I mean, we're doing so much stuff in that. And yeah, show me something that can quickly tell me how many licenses a 33,000 user company needs and compare it to their existing E5 licenses. These are questions that come up, I would say, probably every quarter with some customers, and with every prospect we talk with, these are questions we want the answers to. And furthermore, yeah, I mean, it's a bullet train of technology coming out of Microsoft, which I'm grateful for. Adopting it and embracing it has been a challenge for our customers, and we do an awful lot of end user adoption and things along those lines. But, you know, we have a lot of customers starting to ask about Viva, but I mean, Microsoft's been talking about it for 3 years. We have customers who are starting to want to have chatbots and bots inside of Teams, so that's good. We're focusing quite a bit on that work towards the end of this year. But you know, I don't have a HoloLens 2 yet, and I'm not using Mesh for Teams, and I'm not in AltSpace VR, and these are all very forward-thinking technologies. But despite us having many clients in the financial services and travel and leisure and you know, biotech space and manufacturing, they're not asking for this stuff yet. But Microsoft is doing a good job of providing compelling reasons why they might want to consider it. But honestly, I don't have the $5,000 that to buy a headset to go and try to sell to customers that they don't get it, and they want to see more end user adoption. And frankly, there are bigger pain points that they have, the CTOs, CIOs, with monitoring, and the way that they have to support users certainly has changed. What comes up more and more is, whether on-premise or in cloud, is governance, governance, governance. And what are we going to do for content protection, and how do we prevent data from leaving the organization? And Microsoft's got a lot of features that are they're rich in functionality, but you know, run me a report, show me the bad servers, give me places to go and help them to adapt and adopt the technology, right? Just because a major airline rolls out OneDrive and starts turning off file shares, you know, the CIOs, CTOs all want to know who is using it, who isn't using it, who keeps still trying to save things to their S drive. I mean, there's problems like that. And frankly, all the problems that we used to have with file shares, we're now having, I mean, similar issues with OneDrive. The integration works much better, as you talked about. But you know, people are going to OneDrive and clicking the sync this folder button. Same with SharePoint Online document libraries. And I've got some customers that are trying to sync 100,000 plus files to their local device, their laptops, even their mobile devices, and you know, it doesn't always work great. And the reality is that they use maybe 10 to 30 files per year, but for some reason they thought a good idea would be to sync 100,000 files. So there's a lot of that education that still goes on, and optimizing the technology that they already own and becoming more efficient with it. And that's what we spend most of our time doing. Yeah, some of these challenges that you have on the slide below, things certainly have changed. And I think it's important that there is, you know, monitoring that we put in place. Do you actually have a demo that you can share?
Yeah, I want to do a couple of things.
Sure.
One thing I want to talk about just briefly, and I want to introduce before I go, is John. John's a solutions architect, a friend of mine who I've known for 10 years. One of his friends and I worked together back in 1996 when I started my career. That's how I met John. John has written courseware for Microsoft, has consulted for years. I'm not sure if you're still at MCT because we keep you pretty busy. So he's with us now, and he's a solutions architect, so contributing to product, talking to customers, you know, really instrumental. John, you want to say anything real quick? I know you were on here, and you're gonna address the license optimization stuff later, but you just want to say hi or say anything? That's cool too.
Just want to say good afternoon, everyone. And Jay, yes, I'm MCT alumni because I'm fully dedicated to eNow software now.
There you go. So everyone's wondering, like, who's this guy? Just like, it's my bodyguard. No. So going back to this conversation, the focus has shifted from servers to users. And because this bullet train's moving with features, and we're not always in control, that's how we get into the challenges that you just talked about. Let's tackle monitoring first. And what I want to share with the audience is what I'm hearing from our customer base, and just through a lot of calls that I spend my time on. That's where my time is focused. I head up product at eNow. So I'm coming up with product ideas. Obviously, I'm the CEO, so I set the vision, the culture, have an amazing team underneath me. So I get to, you know, stay out of the sales world, but really just talk to customers about problems and challenges. And so what I hear a lot about monitoring is some people say, well, we don't need monitoring because if something happens, can't do anything about it. I will tell you from the customers that we work with, they're some of the largest in the world, people care. And the thing about monitoring is, because there's this perception that 365 is so easy and everything's good, when something bad happens, in the on-prem world, we always prided ourselves on being proactive. Can we prevent a server from going down? And there are situations you couldn't. A disk drive could crap out. Well, if you have RAID, good. But a power outage, just stuff, there's some things that you could not get around, point blank. Some people might argue with me that, but there's some reality to that. In a cloud world, even a hybrid world, what typically happens is the proverbial stuff hits the fan, and IT doesn't know what's happening, and the calls come into the help desk like crazy. So it's going back to that reactive mindset that we don't want to be in. And then what we hear is a lot of crit-sit calls. Get someone from the networking team, get someone from, you know, the authentication team, get someone from the collaboration team. Let's figure out what's going on. And the big central question everyone's trying to answer is it a Microsoft problem or is it a us problem? Is it a me problem? And if it's a me problem, where is it? So if you take the attitude that we don't need monitoring and you guess wrong, and that happened to one of our early clients that actually helped develop our product. I remember sitting down with them at a tech ed in 2011. That's how long we've been monitoring the cloud. They were on BPOS at the time. And they said, Jay, we were wrong. We thought it was a BPOS problem. And it turns out it was on our network. So the need for visibility is super key. I'll briefly show, I don't want to make this a product pitch, but I'll briefly show kind of what we do. I like the discussion format, Dave, because you and I get to bounce ideas back, and John, feel free to jump in and contribute, because hopefully this at least opens up people's minds to some of these challenges and the need, whether it's us or another vendor, at least have these challenges on your mind. That way you could offer a better level of service to the end users. And no longer are we worried about servers, we're worried about users. So let me share my screen real briefly. And I'll show you kind of how we solved the problem briefly. And I'm going to go quick for time. And I don't want to make this, like, again, a huge product push. So when we developed our solution, again, it happened organically, didn't mean to go build something. We were solving problems for our clients. We looked at monitoring tools and said, what is the challenge with monitoring tools? I go back to my days where I was frustrated managing 18,000 users getting yelled at by the CIO. And I felt like monitoring tools didn't provide any context. They provided too much data. They were too complex to set up. So adding insult to injury, I already have enough work on my plate. Now I got to go set something up. Then it's not effective and I don't get context. Great. That sounds like a good thing. Sign me up for that. We said, let's go build a visual approach to monitoring. So we use a traffic light system where green is good, yellow is a warning, red is bad. You get email alerts, you integrate to ServiceNow, all that great stuff. But the idea is our clients have this up on their NOC so that when there's an issue, you quickly can answer the question of whether it's a Microsoft problem or me problem. And what we do with this visual approach to monitoring is we couple it with synthetic transactions. That way, you're continually testing the end user experience, and you can do that from multiple locations, from people's workstations if you want. But the concept here is a visual approach to monitoring to enable you to be proactive. So if you look at this screen here, I have a bunch of different technologies. I have Exchange, I have Office 365, I have some domain controllers, I got some standard servers. The headings across the top are different intentionally because the way that you would go troubleshoot those technologies is going to be different. Hopefully that makes sense. For 365, really the center points are the network, hybrid components like Azure AD Connect, ADFS authentication, Azure authentication, your workloads. And then over here on configuration, what we do is we have a customized service health dashboard. Let me see if I can make my screen a little wider. There you go. So what happens in these situations, in terms of native Microsoft tools, for example, a lot of times the service health dashboard is either not up to date or you can't get to it. So by leveraging our API, number one, 99% of the time, you'll still be able to access this through the API. Number two, it's a little bit quicker. And number three, what we've done here is you don't have to have the admin rights to be able to access this. You can expose this to your end users if you want. You can click in and see in massive text. I have bad eyes, so we made it really big. You can see what's happening in your tenant. You can kind of go down below, see the incidents. You can see the history. But what's really cool here is we've integrated Twitter because we spoke to our users, and this is a real big part of our value prop, is we work really closely with our customers. And a lot of the things, amazing things that you see in this product have come directly from our customers. But you get a quick view of what's happening in the Twitterverse around 365. And that's a very critical data point because it goes back to that question of, is it a Microsoft problem or is it a me problem? So when you get this data here, then when you see our remote probes and kind of what we're doing down here, we can then correlate if all my lights are going off on my remote probes and all lights are flashing and Microsoft's telling me a problem, very quickly I'm going to be able to ascertain that it's a Microsoft problem. Now, conversely, if only one networking light is going off, then that's going to be a different problem, right? I could be having a network situation in China, in a particular location. And when I drill down into the network, again, I want to be brief here, Dave, just for respect for your audience. I can go into a workload, and we're not only testing if you can get to Microsoft's front door. Because of that one client experience related to the trace route, we integrated that into our product so you can actually see the connection. But you can go a layer deeper and actually see the latency. And you go a layer deeper and you can kind of chart that out. So the idea is by being able to look at this dashboard, you can quickly answer whether it's a Microsoft problem or me problem. And as you kind of drill down into this, the type of synthetic transactions that we run are pretty comprehensive. So for Exchange Online, for example, you can send messages in different formats, read receipt, check if free busy is working, schedule meetings. For components like OneDrive and SharePoint, there was an outage that happened, I think, late last year, and it was only one user action where you couldn't, necessarily like open up a file. So we have everything from searching a document, uploading a document, renaming, creating folders, and we provide that granularity all the way across the different workloads. So I'm kind of clicking through this kind of quick, but you can kind of see that the importance of end user experience monitoring is critical in mimicking the end user experience. the last monitoring scenario I want to touch on that I think is a hot lightning rod topic, and this one tends to be more on the client side, which is Teams. The truth is Microsoft doesn't have a lot of outages. And when they do have an outage, it's sometimes in different regions, sort of like a rainstorm. But when it does happen, then this is where this tool comes into play. On Teams, on the other hand, there's so much complexity behind Teams. You have your network, you have your devices, you have the whole hybrid work movement. There's so much there, right, that can go wrong. What we have done with Teams, instead of kind of having to put an agent on the iPad, your laptop, I mean, how many devices, Dave, do you have? I'm sure you have multiple like me.
I have enough to make my wife upset and my power bill to exceed $100 in one location.
Exactly. So we didn't want to go agent based across that. So we took a different approach. With Teams, what we're doing is we have synthetic transactions, of course, but Microsoft has a Teams call quality dashboard. It's a little overwhelming. This screen gives your management a quick bird's eye view over how is Teams performing month over month, week over week, day over day. We've taken the rate my call feature. This is when after every 5th call, you get a 5-star rating. We aggregate this for your entire organization. So you know, what do my users think about Teams? So you got a great bird's eye view. And then we go a layer deeper. We give you the ability to manage executives. And true to form, they must be working on the system. This new feature is coming out. Everything just went great. It was working an hour ago. What you could do here is you can take an executive who calls you up and is yelling at you. And meanwhile, they're in Costa Rica somewhere working where there's low bandwidth. You can put them in a bucket and you can monitor in real time how many bad calls they have. We actually clean up Microsoft's data. You can monitor how many rate my calls that they've rated poor. And then you can go a layer deeper. This is actual call quality data from me, where you can actually see I've had 11 bad calls, 1 bad meeting, 41% are because of the network, 50% here, or 25% because I'm on Wi-Fi. You can see I spend 50% of my home office, spend a lot of time on my phone. And then you can correlate right here, who are they talking to the most when they're having bad calls? Now, where this becomes really meaningful is when I was in Mexico visiting you. I was there for 11 or 12 days, and you and I both know where we were in Mexico at the time. Wherever I was, the connection was not working well, especially like in South Africa, where there's just challenges with connectivity. This screen would actually show you, and it showed me that I was on my iPhone the majority of the time when I had the bad calls. So instead of going through the call quality data, trying to sift through this, we're making this available to a help desk. Again, the goal to better service, better service an end user. So when it comes to monitoring, I think the problem that we're trying to solve is help people become proactive. And there's so much more. I mean, there's Power Apps. There's so many different applications that users are adopting. I just feel bad for the IT professional that doesn't have the tools, doesn't have the visibility to be able to handle. And because the pressure's still there. I don't think the pressure's changed. I think the pressure actually is increased. And I think it's increased because people are so accustomed to Facebook. They're so accustomed to all these applications, TikTok, whatever application the kids are using these days. We're all dependent upon SaaS applications, and they're always up. So when people come into work, they're expecting 365 to be up. And so for you not to have the tools, I think that's where monitoring comes in. And I think hopefully that gives your audience, something to consider, something to ponder.
Thank you, Jay. Yes, absolutely. And, as a partner, I know customers love this tool. And yes, it's a dashboard. I think what people management is shouting about is the VIP functionality, where you add the list of executives into a group on the back end and can quickly go there and see what's going on. And your example about, being on the beach at Playa Chileno snorkeling with your kids and taking a Teams call on a 3G cell phone connection on an iPhone in a country 2,500 miles away from your house. Yeah, the connection quality wasn't great, but
the beach was amazing. And thank you for taking my kids out.
the fish and the snorkeling were on point. Visibility was clear. But thank you. The other piece actually that I really can't underemphasize is what you call the synthetic transactions. So the old way of finding out what is working and what isn't working, right? You log into, say, OneDrive or Teams, and you go to the Files tab, and then you're really looking at SharePoint Online. And from there, you try to share a file. Okay, it shares. You try to co-author a file. Okay, that's working. And then eventually you find out that it's a problem with like the sync client in Excel or the OneDrive sync client on the desktop. And what I love is that with your dashboards, because of the synthetic transactions, when you drill into the, the OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams sections, in particular for our customers, that's their priority that they have us involved with. The ability that we don't have to do all those transactions and try to figure it out. Your tool proactively goes out on a schedule and does those transactions and lets us know that we don't need to spend our time looking into fixing those problems. Not that they come up a lot, but for some.
But there's enough other 365 challenges. So that's why I think the goalposts have moved from the server to the user, because it's servicing the end user, educating them. You don't want to worry about this, but when there's a problem and you don't have the tools, then that's where the extra stress comes in. So I like to view it as an insurance policy. It's a way for the executives that I speak to improve IT perception, and then let the users know, no, Microsoft's having an issue. And, or if it is your issue, which is the really critical one, especially like with Teams, you're empowered to go fix things, right? That's the core. The big problem I'm seeing, another big problem right now is around governance. I know you and I have spoken a lot about this.
Absolutely.
And I put on the slide that getting to M365 is only the start, because I think sometimes people feel the work to get there is challenging. And when you get there, like, I did it, but no, yes, you did do it. Great. Now, if you don't have governance in place, and a lot of organizations didn't, you still have other challenges. What's your perspective on governance?
Well, right now, what we're seeing, or I think that's top of mind for most people, is when they're accessing corporate data on a mobile device, particularly a mobile device that is not being managed in organizations where they have bring your own device. And, people sign into OneDrive or Teams or SharePoint or, or lists or whatever within their mobile device. And for example, they are viewing say a PowerPoint presentation or a PDF or whatever within the app on the mobile device. Normally there's an option to download that and save it to files like on an iPhone, or permit that on Android as well. But clients, customers, enterprise customers, SMB customers, they don't want people to be able to do that. So, there have to be governance policies put in place to prevent people from downloading that content. Furthermore, Microsoft does a good job with a lot of the features that they have in place that allow you to prevent people from copying and pasting data between the online app and stuff they see on their screen over into like an SMS message on their mobile device or on their, on their MacBook Pros or whatever. See quite a bit of that. I see a lot of people who wish that they did information governance ahead of time. I see a lot of confusion about the role of hubs and site collections and hubifying, and those are all typical challenges you see at an organization that goes from file servers to, SharePoint 2007 and then to 13, and now they want to go to 19. And I just see these types of issues all over the place. The other is, of course, not speaking clearly and communicating to the end users on what they're supposed to do, what the policies are, for example. So there's some people that will try to delete content, whether it's a site within SharePoint or a group within Teams or something, and then it magically reappears because they have a third-party tool in place, maybe to put that back. And I've also recently seen problems with people developing, adding files to content types, for example, in SharePoint Online. And when they go to do something with it, like to rename it or to move it within a folder, for example, which isn't a best practice either way. But when they do it, it turns out that there are systems in the back end that are duplicating the file over and over again, and sometimes the unique identifier, the GUID, isn't preserved when it's moved, or the list item ID, and that causes problems with other third-party things that they've integrated with it, as well as, if there's a Power Automate, maybe a long-term running flow or an Nintex or K2 or Pega or whatever. seeing a lot of things along those lines, but it's mainly people want to prevent certain things from going into various repositories, and they want to prevent the data from leaving certain repositories. A good example in email, you guys do so much with that technology, is, somebody wants to wire money and it's a financial transaction, but it's okay if you email that data within the organization, but then they have an external partner like a banking intermediary bank. Like a lot of international wires from US will go through banks like in Canada before they reach, Brazil or wherever they're sending them. And they're not allowed to email that data to the external partner, the clave and star and some of those other numbers that are in there are prohibited. So people want to put governance in place to prevent that data from leaking, but it also can cause some inconvenience when doing business, business to business transactions. On the plus side, that means that an employee can't steal wire instructions from a financial institution and email it to their home. And if they try, taking a screenshot in Teams and like pasting it in another tool or RDPing, there's a lot of tech in place that will prevent that. But unfortunately, I've heard of cases where people will just pick up their cell phone, take a picture of what's on the screen, and then the system, and you really can't. I'm not teaching people how to hack here. I'm just saying that
it's what they do.
Recently come up. And I'll say enough about that. But that's what we're seeing, really. I mean, information architecture is key, and prohibiting things from going in the wrong repositories, and forcing compliance with managed metadata and retention policies to prevent, keeping documents around too long, over 3 years, IRS, or 7 years, business IRS. It just depends on what they're governed by. Other people have to keep records for 100 years, and they're doing a great job with their consumption of Microsoft Online storage. If you've ever seen a bill for 100 terabytes of space in SharePoint Online, it's rather jaw-dropping. So,
kind of what we're seeing is, for those that were the early adopters of 365, that's why they call it the bleeding edge, because you get there and you're like, oh, we should. It's sort of like public folders in Exchange. Oh, that sounds like a great idea. And then years later, oh boy, why did we let so much not have the control over them, right? Because that causes other issues. So in 365, I think the stakes are higher. And my advice or thought I'd like to share with the audience is, if you're going through a migration now, go spend some time talking to someone like Dave, who's done governance, that can sit down with you guys and start putting some of the controls in, so you don't have a problem that is avoidable. If you're there now, just be aware. Do you know what files your users are sharing on SharePoint and OneDrive externally? Do you know who's accessing them? Do you know how many Teams groups you have and how many owners? And there's just, across every workload, there's a ton of problems. It's an area that we're focusing on. We have a module for it, and it's a new problem we're hearing. Not a new problem. It's a problem that's been there. There's a lot of attention on it now. And so we're kind of doubling down. Our platform does monitoring and analytics. So that's all I'll say about that topic. But I think it's something that deserves more attention. Let's talk about another challenge, which is license optimization. This has become really into the forefront for two reasons. One, during COVID, in a good, positive way, there was positive things that came out of the pandemic. I think the walls fell down and technology adoption went through the roof. Microsoft saw their Teams numbers explode. And as that explosion happened, I was talking to a customer this morning in South Africa, a large finance company. They were saying, man, they had to change their whole licensing because everyone needed now new features, right, to use. So kudos to Microsoft for having collaboration. We're having this meeting over Teams now. Amazing. But it raises the question that I have here on the screen. Do you know what you own? Do you know who's using what? Do you know what people need, how it's forecasted? So the pandemic was one wave. The second wave was Microsoft. And I get this as a software vendor. As you innovate, development's not cheap, and they held the prices low for a while. As soon as Microsoft raised the prices, the motion that we saw happening with our clients is finance, before all this happened, would come to IT and say, hey, we need some data. Not too much. go renegotiate with Microsoft, not too much negotiation, get some more features, kind of keep things steady state. As soon as the price is raised, the load that went to IT to go dig into this stuff went through the roof. I don't know if you're seeing that. And John, this is John's specialty for us. So feel free to jump in, because I'm going to turn it over to you actually to share your screen and kind of walk through how we solve this problem. Before we go into the problem, first, Dave, what's your opinion on what you're seeing? And then John, maybe you can add some color commentary, and then we'll kick it over to you.
Thank you, Jay. It's really, the process kind of goes like this. Enterprise customers who are used to doing things paper-based, they buy a third-party tool and start to do some digital stuff. Maybe they're trying to go paperless with an expense report. And eventually they end up in the Microsoft ecosystem, usually online, with some integration with some legacy systems that are on-premise tools. I mean, biggest enterprise customers, they run like 30, 40 line of business apps, no problem. There's a lot of things that, gaps in, Microsoft doesn't make tools that analyze the stock market and track notes and stuff like that specific to trades. I mean, a lot of third-party vendors are starting to develop stuff like that. But my point is that these companies evolve. They go from on-premise to the cloud, and then they migrate. They use it for like a year, and things are going good. And now they have their end users on it, and they have, OneDrive. All their files have been migrated to OneDrive, and SharePoint Online has all the data. But then they start using all the other stuff that comes with it, and even integrating with the Power Platform pieces. And what happens is like some best practices aren't put into place, and it turns out, they have unlimited versions of files in SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams. They might even have no retention policies. They might not have any reporting tools whatsoever. And then, right, finance gets a bill for this increase of, well, when you were using this for the last 2 years that you've owned it, the first year you were trying to figure stuff out. The second year you got a lot of people on it and people are using it. But now it's the third year, and the 2 terabytes we gave you, or the 5 terabytes that you bought, is now twice as much because people are using it. Or maybe the migration work streams from their 100 file servers have finally finished, and all the data is up in the cloud now. And maybe they even have governance in place now, but they brought in, files from 15, 20 years ago off old RAID devices, off boxes and SANs and NASs. So now they need more licensing. They want to know what happened, how did they get there, why are they getting such a big bill from Microsoft, and then they want to pay consultants like us to figure out what can we do to prevent this from happening. Like, they agree that they're using the storage, they're uncomfortable paying for the additional licenses and storage, but now they're like, listen, before I pay another $20,000 a month increase in licensing, I very much need to figure out how I prevent this from happening a year from now. And customers will hem and haw about this problem, or the fact that they have to pay a consultant, 10 grand to go in and figure out why their licensing is so high right now. And we come up with work streams to reduce, the version history and trim some of those and stuff like that. Is some low-hanging fruit, and put policies to purge things after 3 years. But that doesn't help people right now. And thankfully, eNow Software has a fantastic tool that helps with license, with licensing and optimizing it. And and I'm very appreciative of that. The other thing that we are seeing, Jay, is in the Power Platform side, people were building, 1, 2 solutions, trying it within a department. But then once it's been vetted, now they want to deploy the app out enterprise-wide. And we have some customers with 50,000 seats. You're talking about a hefty bill for some of the, more advanced connectors and Power Platform stuff. And there is no easy way to project what that's going to cost, except for leveraging tools like you have at eNow Software. So please take some time, John. Let's talk about this, because it is a pain point. And
I'm
I realize
smiling because I hear these stories all the time. And John, he spends a lot of time in this area. John, you want to either add some color and then maybe show your screen and talk about how we're helping solve this growing problem.
Yeah. So as Jay had mentioned at the beginning of our this session, that I was a consultant for many years, 15 years actually, and I've dealt with all major industries, different business sizes, large and small. There was one thing that was the same across the board. They had no idea what their license positioning was. And so just to clarify license position, what do you own? What are you using? And how much are you paying for it? Those are three things that really they usually fall in like what you would call a software asset management team. But whenever someone needs answers, who do they come to? The computer nerds. They want the nerds to be able to find that information in 365 to help them determine exactly what their license position is. And so like what David and Jay had said earlier is 100% correct. You really just want to make sure that when you're working with a product, whether it be Office 365 or even something else like AWS or Azure, anything in the cloud, you need to know exactly what you need, and then you need to know how to implement it, and are people actually using it, and is it actually getting you where you need to be. So I'm going to share my screen here. And Jay had shown you the front end, the monitoring side. This is the reporting side of the product, where we have like 50 out of the box reports just for 365 alone. We have reporting also for Exchange on-prem, Active Directory, a lot of other things. Pardon me. But specifically in the license reporting section, we have 12 different reports ready to go out of the box. Now, I'm just going to show you a handful of these, but it's about, like I said, you want to get your license position. And so I'm going to show you just 3 reports here, and we'll talk about them, and Jay will jump in a little bit here and there, talk about how other clients have utilized this. And so when it comes to, this license cost report, it gives you an overview of every type of SKU, every type of license that you're using in your organization. It'll tell you exactly. So for example, we have Office 365 Enterprise E3, and then we also look at add-on products like Power BI Pro, Visio, a lot of these things that do have an added cost that are usually sometimes not associated with an EA. But then we show you what is the cost that you have per license for each SKU, the total number of licenses that you've purchased. All right. And so with that comes a total cost. All right. My organization is spending almost $1 million on Enterprise E3 licenses. Now, we also want to find out the utilization. How many of these licenses have been assigned? Out of the 49,000 that I've purchased, I've only assigned not even 45,000 of them. I still have a lot kind of hanging out there. And then once you also look at, okay, I've assigned these licenses. Out of those that I have assigned, how many of those people are actually utilizing the license? And so over here, I'll point you to our inactive column. Now, inactive is a Microsoft term where someone has not utilized this specific product. They have not connected to OWA, let's say. They have not connected to 365. They have not used their Office desktop install that they maybe that software that they should be using. They have not connected back to 365 in 90 days. Now that's a long time for someone to be having something out there and not using it. It usually warrants time for an investigation. What we're looking for is who is actively using the product and who is not. For example, here, we were talking about Power Apps earlier. Here's the Power BI Pro component. This is an add-on license. You want to find out who exactly does not have or who is not actively using this license in the last 90 days. What it allows you to do is go out and reclaim the license, get that license back from them, and then reallocate it in your organization instead of going out and purchasing more. Now, a lot of these add-on licenses, and Jay and Dave were talking about, the price increase was a little bit of a sticker shock, I guess, to a lot of organizations because they had been paying such a low rate. But with development comes a price. And so once that price started to hit people, they're like, okay, if you're not using something, we need to get it back, and then we need to reallocate it within the organization and put it to good use. And so here we're showing you the UPNs of all of the different users here who are not utilizing their Power BI Pro license. That allows you to go through, start your investigation, reach out to those individuals, reach out to their managers, find out exactly why they're not using the license. And I hate to say this, but even sometimes people are like, are they even still with this organization? Sometimes things fall through the cracks. And so being able to get that kind of visibility, who is using it, how much of the product that we purchased are we actually assigning out there, and then who's actively using it. These are three big things that really go toward your license position. Now, the second report I want to show you is the over licensed users report. This is looking for any license overlap. For example, someone might have been assigned an enterprise E3. And then maybe they're like, you know what, this is not enough. I actually need certain functionality within an enterprise E5. Okay, so I'll assign you the E5. Sometimes if the right processes are not in place, the E3 and the E5 remain on the same user, and now you're just doubling up. And so with that comes an associated cost that really shouldn't be there. So with this report, we're looking for that overlap. And then we can see, for example, here, I have this one user, Marcos Ochoa. His total license cost for this individual is $65. He has 3 licenses assigned. Okay, so what we want to look for, what is the overlap? First, we have the E3, then we can also see he has an E5, plus he has a Power BI Pro. Now, in the case of this particular company, they had Power BI Pro included in an E5 already. So not only were they taking everything that was in E5, because E3 already has all that, and then Power BI is also included in E5, so all you really need to keep is an E5 license. With that comes a potential monthly and yearly savings on a per user basis. And then at the top level, you can see here a 10,000 foot view. What is your potential monthly and yearly savings as an organization? How many people are currently over licensed? So not only are we actually getting to see like, what are we actually saving here? We're actually seeing that 24 users were actually over licensed. That usually comes back to process as well. It allows you to alert the proper people, hey, we need to do a better job about getting these licenses taken back off of certain users once they've been upgraded, so then we can reallocate them through our organization. And then the last report I'm going to show you here, this is the Candidates for License Optimization report. Are my users licensed appropriately? And one of the things that I've seen with a lot of organizations, large and small, they will just go to Microsoft and be like, you know what, just give me E3s for everybody. Okay, that's a lot of money. And so, I mean, I don't know. I don't believe in people in organizations just doing blanket licensing. Now, I understand if you have less than 100 users, maybe that's the best way to go. You don't have to worry about it as much. Maybe money really isn't an issue when it comes at that stage. But when you're working with 45,000 users in an organization, dollars start to count. And so what we're doing here in this report is looking at the utilization of each user of the Office 365 product they've been assigned, and seeing is it actually the best fit for this particular user. So here we can see Bryce Beck. He's the first column or first row here. He's got an E5. He's also got an E3. Obviously, we need to go through the overlap report first, get that cleaned up. But we also see the potential license for Bryce is actually an F3. Well, why an F3? Well, it's based on his utilization of the products that he has. And so over here on the right-hand side, you can see, well, they have an E3 or an E5, and they can be downgraded to an F3 because he has not used his Office apps. His mailbox size is 0.0K. And then, his OneDrive has not even been accessed. He's not used Teams. So we don't need to really give him a license. We can give him an F3 license, which costs us $4 a month compared, and then it gives you the savings of $31 a month and then a yearly savings of $372 just for this one user. And then like here for Marcos, this is a little different, where here it's like, okay, he has these licenses, but what does he need? He needs an E1 license because off of the logics and analytics that go into our product, we're able to determine because of the rule sets we have in place, he actually only needs the E1 because his mailbox size is this, but he is still using his OneDrive. So he really just needs to have the online access. He does not need to have anything else. And so when you're going through and you're taking a look at this on a per user basis, you get an idea of where your users actually stand in terms of using the product. How much are they actually using their Exchange Online, their OneDrive, their SharePoint, their Teams? It takes all that into consideration. And then at the top level, we give you the 10,000-foot view of a potential year of savings of almost $7 million. Now, I want to wrap this up with a couple of things. Number one, this is actual anonymized data from one of our clients, a large entertainment company based out of New York City. They actually did save $7 million. We just took on a client last year. It was last summer. I was a part of helping bring them on board. They have 1,500 users in their section of business, and that's where they use the product. We saved them 1.1 million. We just had another client come on before their EA renewal. We saved them 10% on a very large EA renewal. And so being able to not only just save the money, it's getting your license positioning that's very important, knowing what you have, what's being utilized, and is it actually being put to good use. And so, Jay, is there anything you would like to add about the license reports? Maybe something that may be coming down the pipe that you might want to talk about?
Yeah, I have two comments. This is an area that we're increasingly hearing more requests for. So we're doubling down, adding just tremendous amounts of functionality. I think the goal of this presentation was to make you aware of the problem. Our mission is really to take this problem away from IT and give it to finance. So these dashboard views are available for finance, and we're working toward that. We're working with finance teams across the board. I don't think any IT pro wakes up and says, I want to work on a spreadsheet to go figure out what people are using. It's not fun work. And I hear that over and over again. So going back to our mission at the beginning of this conversation, we're passionate about solving problems that make the life of the IT pro easier. And then just the impact to an organization is super cool. They can go spend that money somewhere else. And I'm sure the people that have IT budgets have plenty of other places they'd like to go spend money. So yeah, that's all I would add. We're down to 3 minutes. So Dave, I don't know if there's any questions that your team has. We're always available to chat about this. If you want to reach out on LinkedIn, on Twitter, please do. Love connecting with people. Love hearing about problems that you guys are facing. But definitely want to open it up to questions. And Dave, above all, thank you for having us, and
yes,
super happy to be supporting such a great cause.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, John. I appreciate your talk on the license optimization piece. It is so important and so key, and it comes up. And thank you for the virtual applause. No questions in the chat at this particular moment. I do have to run downstairs in 2 minutes, but I did want to say thank you very much to our attendees. We have Victor, who connected up from US, I believe, Nasir, Monica, Maria, Lediani, Jacqueline, and of course, Bryce. Hello, Bryce Irvine, and Brian as well. Thank you for being here. And of course, our moderator team, which we very much appreciate. Actually, can you guys go back to the sponsor slide? We should probably give a shout out to all our sponsors. We're very thankful to Jay, of course, for being a virtual sponsor and for his willingness to speak. And thank you very much to Jesus and Jonathan and Marta también. And our other sponsors, IT Proof, which is Fatima and Julio, and the rest of the team. 2 or 3 of them are on the call right now. Mahey Consulting, of course, that's Ryan's company. He's downstairs moderating all the in-person sessions. And Crow Canyon Software, that's our good friends over there, Scott Restivio and Emperor Media Group, Galen and Ryan, and Lion Tech, which is Galen. And we're thankful for the Intech Siestas, and it's also live streaming on their YouTube channel. So thank you to all the sponsors. We've got 90 seconds. If there are any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat. I think the bottom line is that, in addition to eNow software being terrific for the monitoring piece, that it does help with governance. It does also help with license optimization, and your customers might not be experiencing challenges now, but when they do, you have a trusted advisor and a friend you can call with Jay over at eNow Software. I mean, come on, saving a company